Welcome to Spicy Toast Gaming and our updated Jinx guide for Path of Champions. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe, and let's get into it. First, we're going to start off with a brief overview of the champion, discussing their general playstyle so you have a better understanding of the champion, and if you want to invest your time as well as shards into them. First, we have crazy consistent damage. Every card you play damages the enemy nexus and a random enemy unit, giving you absolutely massive amounts of removal. Up next, we have board wipes. With the right setup of relics, Jinx is able to consistently wipe the entire enemy board when you play her. Next up, we have discard playstyle. Jinx is currently the only champion that has discard as their main gameplay mechanic. And then last up, we have very easy. Since Jinx is the first champion you are given, it makes sense that she's going to be the easiest champion in the game. It almost doesn't matter how you play. As long as you are playing cards, you'll most likely win the game. Alright, that's it for the overview. Let's go hop in game to better explain some of the points we touched on here. In game now, you see we have Jinx at level 30 with 3 stars. She is a 4-cost champion with quick attack and 4-3. Her level up condition is I see your hand is empty. So often you're going to be triggering this by discarding your own hands until you get a certain relic later on. When she levels up, she goes to a 5-4. Now round start, draw 1. So you get 1 extra draw at the start of every round. Each round, the first time I level up or your hand is empty, create a super mega death rocket in hand. So that's right here. 1 cost slow, deal 3 to the enemy nexus and 1 to all enemies. So that happens when she levels up, and then anytime after that she sees your hand is empty. So again, wanting to discard more cards even once she's leveled up, so you keep emptying your hand and creating those death rockets. Now her champion spell, Get Excited, 3 cost fast to play discard 1, deal 3 damage to anything, so including the enemy nexus. Good for either damaging and getting rid of a specific unit, or doing some extra damage to the nexus. Now her star powers, 3 star when you play or discard a card, deal 1 to the enemy nexus and 1 to a random enemy. The 1-star version of this is when you play or discard a card, deal 1 to the enemy nexus. So as long as you are playing your cards, you're going to be damaging the nexus as well as damaging enemy units. And again, this has more discard synergy because when you're discarding a card, you're still dealing damage. So if you play a card which discards a card, you're essentially triggering this twice. So you're doing 2 damage to the nexus and then 2 damage to random enemies. Now your 2-star plus 1 starting mana, when you level up a champion, create a super mega death rocket in hand. So if you have a support champion that you level up, you're going to create this. If you level up Jinx, you're actually going to create 2 of these, 1 from the star power and then 1 from Jinx herself. So normally when you level up Jinx, you want to have 2 extra mana to be able to play these 2 super mega death rockets, allowing you to do 6 damage to the enemy nexus and 2 damage to all other enemies. Very, very strong. Taking a look at your starting deck now. So we have Jury Rig. When played or discarded, summon a Scrap Scuttler. With Farsight, so you're always going to draw this at the start of the game. You see right here, Scrap Scuttler. This is what the card will summon. We have Pow Pows. Very strong 1-cost burst, deal 3 to a unit. This is actually crazy strong. The enemy can't respond because this is burst. Really cheap and a lot of damage. Next we have Zaunite Urchin. Play, discard a card to draw 1. This has the studded leather, so it's a 3-2. Also, I believe this also has Challenger. So yeah, as you see right here from the level up, the Zaunite Urchin also gets the Skirmisher's Saber, so Challenger. Sometimes with the starting deck, it doesn't like to display certain items if the card already has an item. So here for the starting deck, you not only get that studded leather, you also get Challenger, so very cost 1 drop, and so you're discarding a card to draw a card. So if you discard something like the Jury Rig, it's still going to summon the Scrap Scuttler, because as you see when played or discarded. Next up we have the Boom Crew Rookie, so 2 cost with Shadow Totem, attack deal 2 to the enemy nexus with a 1-3, but since you're summoning a ephemeral copy, you can attack with both of these. Both of their attack skills will go off, dealing 4 damage to the enemy nexus, so ton of damage right there. Eager Apprentice, 2 cost, 3-2 with that studded leather. When I'm summoned, refill 2 spell mana, so it somewhat pays for itself. Next we have Rocket Border, 2 cost, 4-4 with that Dragon Tooth and Quick Attack. Again, a crazy strong unit for the amount of mana you need to spend. Next up we have the Amateur Aeronaut. I believe this also is reduced down in the champion level ups. Let's go take a look at that. Also, you see here, Boom Crew Rookie has the pickaxe. So we just talked about them. So they not only have Shadow Totem, they also have the pickaxe, bringing them to a 3-3. Jinx deck really struggles, apparently, to not show you all the items on the cards. Alright, so it looks like the Amateur Aeronaut doesn't have the mana pot. Must have been misremembering that. But you see we have 3 cost, 2-3 with the Targon Brace. give my supported ally 1/1 this round. Now, when you're cutting a card, I will normally cut one of these two, either the Amateur Aeronaut or the Sump Dredger. While they're both fine cards, for their mana cost, they're just not as good as your cheaper units. Like, I would much rather summon the Rocket Boarder, that's the 4/4 Quick Attack and Fury, or the Eager Apprentice with the 3/2 and refill 2 spell mana. Even the Boom Crew Rookie, the 3/3, because remember that pickaxe, it's not showing, that summons a ephemeral version. Your cheaper cards are just so much more powerful that these are the two cards I would normally cut. Or if you need to discard a card with some of your other cards and abilities, these would be the two I'd normally discard in a match. But last up, other than Jinx, we have the Sump Dredger. So play discard to draw 1, and it has speed wraps as a 4/3. Again, overall decent card. I think there's better cards that you could spend the mana on. And then we have Jinx for the 4 cost. So very strong deck, especially some of your cheaper units are incredibly powerful. You have crazy removal from the Pow Pows. In fact, it only costs 1 mana to deal 3 to a unit that's burst, so the opponent can't respond. A lot of very powerful, crazy cards in here. But again, Jinx being the first champion you get, they want you to have a very easy, powerful deck that you can easily clear adventures with. Taking a look at relics now. Now, Jinx is very strong with some relics. So this is my normal go-to setup as far as rare relics. So we have the Scourge's Stash. Plunder, I cost 2 less. Remember, every time you play a card, you're dealing 1 damage to the enemy nexus. So it's very easy to get this Plunder effect off. In fact, you can easily play Jinx at the very start of the game. What you just need to do is get a certain power that makes your spells cost 1 less or have a bit of spell mana. What you can do is play the Jury Rig. You always know you're going to draw this. So you play this, that's going to deal 1 damage to the enemy nexus from your star powers. And then because of the Scourge's Stash, you can play Jinx for that 2 mana right at the start of the game. Very powerful combo. Next up, we have the Loose Cannon's Payload. This is pretty much the best relic for Jinx and one I always recommend using. When I'm summoned, discard your hand, then create that many Pow Pows in hand. Now, you're guaranteed to get this relic by completing, I believe it is Garen's 2-star adventure. If you don't know, some of the first champions that were added to the game all had their own personalized stories with their own adventures. So for Garen, if you play Garen, you play his personalized 2-star adventure, you'll get the Loose Cannon's Payload. Very good to put on Jinx, not really that good on anyone else, but this does a lot of different things for you. So for one, it immediately levels up your Jinx because it's discarding your entire hand, so Jinx will see your hand is empty. Then it will create Pow Pows. Now Pow Pows, that's this card right here, 1 cost burst, deal 3 to an enemy unit. So giving you tons of very cheap removal cards, you can easily clear the enemy board, but since it's also discarding your entire hand, if we go look at your star powers, when you discard a card, deal 1 to the enemy nexus and 1 to a random enemy. So essentially when you play Jinx, she's immediately leveling up, doing a ton of damage to the enemy nexus and the enemy board because of discarding all of your cards. And then since she's leveling up, she's creating 2 super mega death rockets, one from her 2nd star power, remember right here, and those death rockets deal 3 to the enemy nexus and 1 to all enemies. So again, tons of damage to the enemy nexus, tons of damage to the entire enemy board. By far the best relic to put on Jinx, and takes Jinx from already being an incredible champion to just being one of the most, debatably the most overpowered champion in the game. And then one of the other relics I like to use is the Curator's Gatebreaker. When I'm summoned, I strike the enemy nexus. Again, just putting a little bit of extra damage on the enemy nexus to try to end the game as soon as you play Jinx, which can be on the very first turn because of the Scourge's Stash. Now this order right here is very important because your relics will activate in the order they're placed. So if you put this here, it will level up Jinx. When she levels up, she goes to 5 power, and then the Gatebreaker will go off hitting for that 5 power to hit the enemy nexus, just again doing a little bit of extra damage. So this is a very powerful setup. I definitely recommend trying it out if you have Jinx. Another great relics for Jinx, the Crown Guard Inheritance. When I level up Rally, you could easily pair this with the Loose Cannon's Payload to immediately level up and rally if you want to use that as a combo to end the game. Luden's Tempest, another fun relic to pair with the Loose Cannon's Payload, as this is going to increase the damage of all your Pow Pows as well as the super mega death rockets you're creating. Riptide Battery, Plunder, play Cannon Barrage a number of times equal to my cost. I would not pair this with the Scourge's Stash, as this is going off of how expensive your champion are. So if the champion's cheaper, this is going to do less damage. So if you don't have the Scourge's Stash, this can be another way to deal a great amount of damage to enemy units as well as the enemy nexus. Those Cannon Barrages deal 2 to a unit. If it's dead and gone, deal 1 to the enemy nexus instead. Now, if you want to focus more on killing all the enemy units, you might want to trade Curator's Gatebreaker for Riptide Battery, as this will help you kill more enemy units. I prefer to go straight for the Nexus damage, which is why I go for Gatebreaker, because it's going to hit harder, especially when you pair it with the Scourge of Stash, because you can play it earlier and still not lose that extra damage. Tempest Blade, again, since you're immediately leveling up Jinx when you play her, another fun ability you can pair with her. If you want to go for a bit more of a slower game, and not just try to end the game as soon as you play Jinx, you might want to play the Grand General's counterplan plus the Archangel Staff at the top. So Archangel Staff, round start, refill your spell mana, and then the Grand General's counterplan. Every round you'll be creating a Get Excited, giving you great removal or damage to the enemy Nexus. Also, since you're discarding a card, you'll very easily be able to level Jinx up, or if she's leveled, clear your entire hand to make more Death Rockets. A fun spell-based approach could be the Luden's Tempest, Grand General's Counterplan, and Archangel Staff. For common relics you might want to go with, especially at the very start of the game. So Lost Chapter is very good for Jinx, especially if you end up pairing it with the Loose Cannon's Payload. The Rage Blade, a very simple relic, but if you just want a couple extra stats, it's fine if you're going through some of the earlier adventures. Banshee's Veil. Jinx can be very important to your game plan, and if she's going to be on the board for extended periods of time, so you're not at the point where you have a more advanced relic setup, then you might want to go for a Banshee's Veil just to protect your Jinx and make sure she's not taken out by the enemy. I know it can cost you some games when you're discarding your entire hand to level up Jinx, and then they kill Jinx and then you're stuck with an empty hand but with no payoff. That can really screw you over sometimes, so protecting your Jinx really can be quite important. Ravenous Hydra, if you're trying to go more for a board wipe Jinx and you want to just add a little bit of extra damage, this is also a good call. Chameleon's Necklace, game start, create 2 copies of me in your deck. Now, since Jinx is a 4 cost, you're normally going to be able to draw her by the time you need to play her, but if you are struggling with that, not bad to have some Chameleon's Necklace, or the Grand Duelist Blade for Challenger. Again, quick attack Challenger combo, very strong, and probably what I would actually use if I had to level Jinx up again. I may use this or the Lost Chapter for my very first common relic. Alright, that's it for the relics I wanted to highlight. Now, there's a bunch of different ways to play Jinx. There's plenty of other relics that are still useful. She can utilize pretty much any relic in the game. Those are just some of the strongest ones that I wanted to highlight for you. That's it for the in-game portion now. Let's go look at what powers and support champions you might want to look for while playing Jinx. Taking a look at powers now, first up we have Enfeebling Strike. When you damage an enemy, reduce its power by the damage dealt from your star power, since every time you play or discard a card you're dealing damage to enemies. This is a very easy and passive way to reduce down enemy power, giving you a massive amount of survivability. It's generally the best defensive power in the game, and it continues that right here. Stabilize, when you summon a champion, summon a exact ephemeral copy of it. This is great with Jinx, especially if you have a couple relics that are going to let Jinx do her board wipe and massive amount of Nexus damage. So having that happen twice really helps you just be sure you end the game as soon as you play Jinx. Very, very strong. Definitely pick it up if you see it. Last here we have Counterfeit Production, but honestly, this is any ability that summons a fleeting card every single round. And the reason you want to have that is for 2 reasons. 1, it gives you a card for free that you can discard every round, so you can freely play any of your discard cards without actually having to discard a card from your hand. So really great right there. But then also when you play Jinx, if you're using your relic that discards your entire hand, that is going to be dealing damage for every card that's discarded. So essentially you want Jinx to discard as many cards as possible. So having extra cards that are created in your hand every single round just makes Jinx do even more damage to the enemy units and the enemy Nexus when you play her. So that's another reason why these abilities that give you a fleeting card every round are so strong for Jinx. Next up, we have Slow But Steady. When you play a slow spell, copy it with the same targets. Jinx Super Mega Death Rocket, the card she makes when she levels up herself or levels another allied champion. That spell normally does 3 damage to the enemy Nexus and 1 damage to all other units. The Slow But Steady making it go off twice, dealing 6 damage to the enemy Nexus and 2 to all other enemies. Very, very strong. Great pickup if you see it. Raiding Party, when you damage the enemy Nexus, grant the top ally in your deck 1/1. Since every single time you play a card, you're damaging the enemy Nexus, this is just massively buffing up all the cards you're drawing. Flexible game plan, game start, draw 2. Always good to have more cards in your hand at the start of the game. But again, like we talked about earlier, when you play Jinx and she discards her entire hand, you want to have as full of a hand as possible. So this helps you out with that. Then we have Wild Inspiration. Your created cards cost 1 less. And then next to it, we have Spellslinger. Your spells cost 1 less. both of these are going to be fulfilling the same role for your Jinx. Now, if you're playing Jinx with that relic we've been talking about, where she discards her entire hand and then creates that many Pow Pows in hand, all of those Pow Pows are going to cost 1 mana, and then the super mega death rocket that she creates when she levels up, that also costs 1 spell mana. Normally you're playing Jinx as soon as possible, so you don't have any extra mana to play all of those spells. Wild Inspiration and Spellslinger will both make all of those spells absolutely free, so grabbing one of these will really help you out. In this situation, Spellslinger is a little bit better, but honestly, Wild Inspiration is still amazing. Definitely pick up either of these if you get the option. Then we have Sorcery, Round Start, Refill your spell mana. I would say the other two in most situations are actually better for Jinx and her playstyle, but this also will definitely help out as well. So if you see it, pick that up as well. That's it for the powers I wanted to mention though. Let's go take a look at support champions. Now, I will say Jinx isn't really a champion that needs support champions. You normally just want to play with Jinx and her own cards as they're so overpowered. So while there are some champions that can help you out, in general, you just want to be playing with Jinx anyways, so they're not as important. Some aspects you might want to look for support champions though: discard. Any other champion that also has discard synergy, absolutely great with Jinx. Then next up, easy to level up. When the support champion levels up, you're going to be creating that super mega death rocket, so having a champion you can easily level up is also great to have. For some specific champions then, we have Scion, another card that is very much all about discard synergy, so he pairs quite nicely with Jinx. And then for easy to level up, we have LeBlanc, very strong champion, very, very easy to level up, works out quite well. I don't have it noted here, but any champions that also want to deal with plunder effects would work out quite well with Jinx and her playstyle, as she's constantly damaged the enemy nexus. So some other champions like Sejuani, where she levels up by damaging the enemy nexus, or Gangplank, it's the same thing. Both of those would also be decent options. Alright, that's it for the updated Jinx guide. Hope this helped you out. If it did, please like and subscribe. We're trying to get to 10K subscribers by the end of the year. Still have a long way to go, so any help is greatly appreciated. And I hope you all have a great day.